What does it take to be a product manager? So you've got some technical skills, but you don't love spending all day coding, or you're sitting around thinking, one day I'd like to launch my own product or startup. Product management is an exciting, well-paid career option for you. Welcome to Programmable, where we talk to tech luminaries to help you with your career. Programmable is brought to you by JDoodle, the AI coding suite for learning and building together. Try our easy-to-use online development environment and you can start coding in 88 programming languages in seconds. I'm Lucas Hakewill, and today we're speaking with David Wang about product management. David is a product leader on a mission to help you break into product management. He has over 18 years of experience in product management, including at Linktree in the creator economy, Society1 on peer-to-peer lending, marketplaces at Airtasker, and banking at Commonwealth Bank. David coached me through some pretty difficult career times about 4 years ago during COVID. He's recently moved to Seattle, and I'm here to ask him all of the juicy questions about what it takes to build a career in product. David, welcome.
Oh, thank you, Lucas. I can't believe it's 4 years since we first met.
It's been a while.
Yeah.
It's been a while.
Yeah.
I'd really like to start with what makes a career in product exciting for you?
Good question. I think about this a lot, right? Like, there's certainly certain bets in my career where I can focus on a career path, and I've stuck to product for a long time because of the impact that it can make for the world. If there's one job that can really leave a legacy, is through the work that you do, and I think product is one of those things. That's what kept me here. And
amazing. So that idea of, hey, I'm contributing to something that will leave a legacy or will impact lots of people who might be using a product.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And I learned this like firsthand when I was started off my career at Vodafone. Back in the days, we were making like these mobile apps. Mobile apps is nowadays you can download from the App Store, but back in the days you had the dumb phones, so you got to create Java apps and all that stuff. And then I saw firsthand of all the people that was using the product that I created, but didn't know it was my product. And then when I started to offer tech support and help them out, they think like, oh, this is great. So like just seeing people using your app or using something that you created is really gratifying.
Oh, that's really powerful. And when you're actually supporting them through the process of trying to get onboarded, you get to see it firsthand. Do you think that's a common motivator for many people who want to have a product career?
I think it does take a particular personality, but I guess is it a nature versus nurture question? It could be both. Like, it doesn't really matter what path you take, but I think to be a product person, you do have a product mindset. You didn't need a product mindset, like coming from problem perspective, figuring out, connecting the dots around data and customer insight, and having the drive to push something forward even though people don't believe in you. So it does take a particular personality if the passion is there. And I'm a true believer of like anyone can become a product manager, but it does take a particular personality, but there is a path to get there.
Cool. Okay, I really want to dive into that, into the mindset and the personality. Before we do that, though, can you tell us a bit about some of the different types of roles that might be around? What's a product owner versus a product manager? How does that relate to a project manager or a scrum master? Can you talk about the role types?
Oh yeah, great question. I might maybe answer this from two perspectives. So I'm going to approach it from a high-level philosophical perspective, and then I'm going to go into like what's current right now, which is the job titles, and also probably talk about where it's going as well in the future. So I think like job titles and of a product person, like I think what product is a very soft skill type of role, where you require sort of different skills from a business perspective and design and a little bit of tech. So basically, you're gluing all the different types of skills into one role, and people are like, well, we don't know what to call this. This is product, and this could change over time. And as a result, we have different types of roles and titles in the industry. So depending on what type of company you're at, different type of company sees the world differently, and they see like different parts of the elephant. So, if a product owner in a big bank could mean very different to a product owner at a smaller company. So at a high level, if you're looking at big companies that's hiring product owners, most of them right now in the current space is actually in big companies, and they generally will follow like a agile framework or scale agile framework and all these type of things, and because they need to get people all arranged and doing things and focused and moving one step with 1,000 people together. So within that context, the product owner role is more around like a delivery role. Like they figure out what needs to be built, and they work with the business. Sometimes they work with product managers as well to figure out what to build, and they work with developers, write down stories, plan the Scrum process, and all that stuff. And that's generally at a big company. But a product owner at a smaller company is actually, you could be someone who's actually owning the product. It could be someone who's like the product manager, but they just don't have the title of a product owner, or they're a little bit more junior in the years, like 1 or 2 years into the career path, and they go into that company. And that role could vary. So you could be doing like discovery work or finding new products or delivery work, or sometimes you might be just managing projects as well. So that's the product owner part. For the other titles around product manager, again, that changes depending on like the type of company. So if you're in a big company, product manager, you could be, a big company like actually right now I'm in Seattle. My house is right next to the Meta office. And I met some really amazing product managers out there. But then because you're in a big machine, the product that you look after is like one small part. Like, I met a product manager who looks after like an Oculus device like you see in Meta, but they look after just the controller element of it, right? And that's a product manager at a big company, and that's your product, and it makes sense. But if you work in a bigger company, the product you look after could be a whole Oculus device on its own, like end to end, right? And I actually work with someone who's really amazing. He looks after mining drones, and that's his product. And it's a whole heap set of products. So yeah, so that product manager role does change depending on what type of context you're in, and that's the product side. And then projects, that's confusing as well. Project is everything that you need to orchestrate to deliver a goal. And that's a project manager. So sometimes this goal could be a product launch, which is why there's confusing between project manager and product managers, because you're working towards a goal of delivering a product out to the market. But sometimes project managers don't work with product managers. They might be working at when I started my career back in the days, I worked in retail, and then we have merchandising updates whenever we launch a new phone. And we have project managers coming in and helping us change out the merchandising and making sure everything's changed. And that's a project management role. And project managers come in and out of different projects to facilitate, a goal, usually to do with the launch or some sort. So yeah, so these are the different type of roles.
Yeah, brilliant. I think that it's easy to get confused. They're both called PMs.
Yes.
And it sounds like, David, there's not only difference between the roles where maybe a product manager has a bit more ownership over the product itself and a little bit more power to decide the direction of the product. And particularly, they're probably undertaking some of that discovery effort to better understand what the customers or users need, whereas a product owner might be a little more focused just on the delivery part of building the product. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, I think that's fair. But it's very company dependent. So if you're a big company, you focus more niche. Small company, more broad.
Yeah.
But I think you touch a very good point here. Like the ownership of the outcome is actually on the product person themselves, versus project is a little bit different. Like they don't own the outcome as much. But I guess outcome is very contextual. So what do I mean by outcome? Outcome is a product is a tool or solution for the business to make money. So that's the outcome. So your product is not making money. It's the product manager's fault, or the job to do it, to make sure. It's not really the project person's fault or job to make sure that the product does make money or doesn't make money. So that's the biggest difference.
Yeah, so there's a really strong business component here. It's not just about building tech.
No. Yeah, it's actually technology is just the enabler of it. It's the core of it if you're working in a tech product, but not necessarily the tech as well.
Great. So David, can you talk to me about a representative example of what a day might look like for a product manager working on a tech product?
Yeah. So mainly a product manager's role is to look after discovery and delivery of product. And the day-to-day varies depending on what's needed. But at a high level, you should constantly be discovering new product ideas and discovering new things to build, whether that's a product or feature. And then you should also managing delivery, which is like aligning different teams, figuring out what to build, defining requirements, working out the design and all that stuff. So my day will vary depending on what's required in that focus area. But if we take a step back, look at from a whole week perspective, like there should be days where you focus really around understanding, are we discovering the right product? So maybe if you break it down in a week, and this is not the same thing, but if we break it down from Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, like I would probably spend like Monday trying to figure out like some stats for the product, like are we hitting the right goals? Are we getting the right customer feedback? Are we solving the right problem? And spend all the time just thinking about and just setting up for the week. And then on Tuesday, I might jump in and think about some customer problems and maybe work on a presentation deck to sell an idea that I might have. And at the same time, I might jump into like design reviews and reviewing a feature, a product that we're building that's in flight. Or I might be even doing QA for a product that might be launching as well. And then on Wednesday is usually the day where a lot of the delivery focused is, because we're heading towards the end of the week. So we'll probably be doing release planning, feature planning, product strategy presentations and all that stuff. And then Thursday and Friday is more at delivering. And then Friday is when we really wrap up the day and just reset for the week. So the work does vary, but it's mainly around discovery and delivery. And also other hangover work as well. Actually, that's a really good point. Product managers do fill the role of the company if there are no one else doing it. So, for example, when I was working at Westfield, I had to I was looking at the parking product, and then we had a on-site server that needs to be delivered from one shopping center to another shopping center. And because no one else is doing it, like I had to unrack the server from a server room, unscrew it, and then ship it to the next shopping center and put it back into the new server rack. That's the role of a PM, to make sure things are delivered and done.
You're the jack of all trades, and I guess if your role demands ownership, you're going to take ownership of the things that maybe other people don't want to.
Yeah, exactly. It's a high pressure role where you have ownership of the outcome rather than individual deliverables. So
Yes.
if my product doesn't make money, then I have a hard conversation with the business. So because of that ownership, it forces you to do a lot more things.
And I think for someone who gets bored at the idea of sticking with one thing for too long, that week where you had such a varied week, Monday discovery, Friday delivery, everything in between, probably sounds pretty exciting.
Yeah, exactly. You got to be careful what you wish for, because So yeah, you will get very broad and you can get dragged into various different things. And that's the life of a PM. And it's also not a role that you can switch off as well. Like I'm constantly thinking about improvement and getting feedback. And like it's not the type of role where you can be like, okay, I'm done with my code. I pushed out, done. But you actually, get Slack messages, you get problems, you get things. So it's that. But also, and as a result, like prioritization of your time and time boxing is a crucial skill for a product manager. And you're not talking about local optimizations, but you're talking about big things like, should I go talk to a customer today, or should I go do, write up more tickets for my development team? Like these are big trade-offs, and you might not have the right answers. So that's probably like the downside of having a PM role is this constant trade-off and time management.
And there's probably no one looking over your shoulder saying, hey, you need to go talk to that customer tomorrow. You have to make that decision.
Absolutely. Yes. There's a lot of autonomy involved.
We spoke earlier about product mindset, and there are a few key mindsets that you believe are really important for a product person. Can you tell us a bit more about that?
Yeah. I think the number one mindset that I take is actually just thinking about don't jump into solution. Actually, one mindset I do is like customer problems don't change, is the technology and behavior that shifts. Like that's a mindset that I've taken to heart and it's ingrained into everything I've built. So from a product, what does that mean? So that means, from a product perspective, like if you look deep enough, the problems that people are trying to solve doesn't change. Like Uber, point A, point B, that doesn't change. We just now order it from an app versus calling up a phone number, right? Even though that doesn't change. But what changes is the technology, which is the Uber app, and the behavior of people going into the app rather than picking up a phone, right? Or back in the days, you would actually have to like talk to someone and someone have to like schedule a car like a week in advance, right? That's crazy. That's the behavior, and that was very normal. So like that's the first mindset that I always keep to my mind is like, customer problems don't change. It's technology and customer behavior that shifts. And if you can identify the shifts in those things, those technology and customer behavior, then you can come up with a pretty innovative product.
So it's really about, hey, I actually need to solve kind of a timeless problem for someone. I'm not here thinking, I've got this great idea for an app where you can order a car. Actually, we kind of want to step back and think, well, people are already willing to pay money for a crappy taxi service.
Yeah.
There's obviously something here where there's a problem that desperately needs solving.
Yeah, absolutely. Like people are willing to pay money to solve a problem of traveling from point A to point B. Like that already exists. It's a century-old problem. And yeah, just nowadays is solved by Uber, and in the future it could be solved by, I don't know, like robotic taxis. So yeah, that's the first mindset.
Customer problems don't change, but it's the behavior and the technology around them.
That shift, yeah. Another mindset that I always bring to my heart is like going deeper into like the customer problems, which is great products must solve heartfelt problems. Just to play on that problem part as well, because it's really the emotional problems that you solve for people that drive the sales of the product or drive adoption of the product. If you solve a very superficial, high-level problem that is solution-focused, then you're very open to get out-competed because there's no differentiation and no stickiness in the product. And a good example was I learned this lesson when I was early when I worked at Vodafone. We were creating like different type of SIM cards. So I created a SIM card that let people like nominate a phone number they can call back. They can actually call anytime for free. And then there's other telcos that don't offer this service. And people think like, this is crazy. Why would you give a limited phone number they can call? Like no one's going to use that. Well, it turns out that we had a lot of international students buying the SIM cards. And then there's international students will call mom, like call the parents back home for free. And this is the thing that drive a lot of sales for this product because we're solving that emotional need of security and connection. So Yeah, that's the second mindset I think people should keep. Like, great products must solve heartfelt problems.
And calling your mum, I can't think of a more heartfelt problem.
Yeah.
How how do you know that something's a heartfelt problem?
Oh, great question. You really have to speak to customers. Like, I know this is a very typical advice that you speak to any product person. Oh yeah, what do you do? Oh, just go speak to customers. But when you think about speaking to customers, it's about understanding the lifestyle and just immersing yourself into their experience. That's the best way to speak with the customer. So it's not like, oh, let's come on an interview and I'm going to give you a $50 gift card. Like, that's great. That's one way to start a conversation. But what generally happens is you give them $50 gift card, you keep the mobile number, and then anytime you got any questions, you go back to the customer and go, hey, what do you think? Here's my email. Come email me anytime. And that's how we also discovered this problem around calling, parents, is because how we sold the product was actually we're at a language school, and then we realized that it's not the students that's buying these SIM cards, it's the parents that's buying the SIM cards. And we saw that because I was just there seeing the parents like, why are you buying this SIM card? And we have a conversation with them. And then, and it's through that conversation where they told us like, yeah, I need a safety line for my children going overseas to study. And when we spoke to students too, when they landed in Australia, we also like would met them at the airport and followed them through the journey. And the first thing they do is put the SIM card in the phone, call mum, say, hey, I'm safe, flight's okay, everything's fine. Like, that's what speaking to the customer is. It's really just jumping in there, just helping them solve the problem together.
Wow, so you're really visiting them at the airport, you're visiting them at the language school, you're going to where they are and actually learning more about their lives. It sounds like just sending a Google form survey doesn't quite cut it.
Oh, look, it's a good signal at scale. Like, it's another tool. It's a very good tool to use. I don't discredit surveys and forms. That's a very good tool. But where you start from should be there to help to solve the problem. You remember, like, customer problems don't change, and the way you create product is you actually go there and you solve it for them, and then you can use technology and behaviors to create a solutions for that.
And if I think about those two key insights that you got, parents are buying the SIM cards, and the first thing I do when I get off the plane is I put the SIM card in the phone and I call mum. Maybe you would have got the first one from a survey who bought this SIM card, but like, how long is that survey to include that question? Suddenly it's a 30-question survey.
Yeah.
You wouldn't know what they do when they first get off the plane. You might not even know that that's important until you actually go to visit them.
Exactly. Yeah. And this is another skill that I teach as well, which is time to signal, which is like all these great, there's different methods for you to collect data, right? Talk to customers, surveys, A/B tests and all this stuff. It's about another mindset. It's like time to signal. What's the fastest time for you to get the signal from the customer? And if talking to them is the fastest way, then just do it. You don't have to wait for a Google form, because coming up a Google form is hard. You got to come with the right questions to ask, got to get the email address, got to get approved by legal, you're going to send it out, you're going to wait for people to reply. Like, that signal is too slow for this situation. But it is useful in some situations. Like, we did use surveys afterwards and say, like, how many people have this problem? Is it just this person, or is it a bunch of other people? So it's about, I think, what is the right, the fastest tool to get the signal. I think that's
time to signal. And if you want quantitative data, how many or what proportion, actually a survey is probably going to be faster than doing all of those conversations.
Oh, yeah, I was actually in the conversation with some PMs from Amazon just the other day. We were like drinking beer together, and asked the questions like, how do you guys do customer interviews? They're like, well, we don't. I'm like, what do you mean you don't do customer interviews? Like, that's like going against what I believe in. They're like, well, we don't do it because we've got 7 million people using this product. It's faster for me to just put up a pop-up, and people can click on the pop-up, we can get more data points, and we can move forward the next experiment than, talking to 7 million people. So I think it's like very contextual as well. Like Yeah, so that mindset, third mindset, like fastest time to signal.
Yeah, that helps you make the decision. What is the best mode
Yeah, yeah,
for me to get the information I
yeah, absolutely. I was like blown away. Oh, you guys don't talk to customers.
need? So if you're an introvert and you want to be a product manager, go work at Amazon.
Yeah, yeah, work in the data machine learning team. I think you'll be amazing. But you still have to talk to customers. Like it's just you're just delaying the process. Um,
So this is an important point. If you're a developer and you already hate the meetings that you have to do, and you're thinking about, do I move into product? Actually, there's quite a lot of talking involved in a product role, right?
mm,
Like maybe if you don't love meetings or you don't love speaking with people, product isn't for you.
yeah, oh, look, I think this is a good perspective. Like there's probably some niche roles out there. Like if you look at the bell curve, like there's probably a long tail, some roles that you probably don't need to speak with people as a product manager. But I would say majority of the roles that's available is not that. Yeah,
Yes.
like yeah, absolutely. You have to be able to convince people with your product idea because
Mm.
your job is to help the business make money. That is the thing. And yeah, so there's probably some niche crypto thing or blockchain thing that you can do that you can just program an API and the API can talk to a smart contract, right? You can probably do that, make a lot of money, but that's not the majority of the role. Like, yeah.
And even if you are in that bell curve of a product manager who doesn't really have to speak to their customers, you said before that influencing is a really important part
Absolutely.
of the role. You have to convince the CEO or your leadership that it's important to build to your plan, essentially.
Yeah, it's so important. And a lot of the time, the great products that you launch, that you have an idea, people push back because the idea is so crazy. Like when I take the example around like making that phone number for free,
Hmm.
I had so much pushback. People are like, what are you doing? Like, people can call any number for free. So I can call like some toll free. Like back in the days, you have like these ringtone mobile numbers. Like you can call me and listen to music, and it's like $5 per minute, right? Like you can call those. Like so, I had so much pushback, and you need the communication skills. You need the influence skills to actually, convince people to say, like, okay, well, I hear you. I think that's a fair thing. That's a fair risk that you're calling out, and let's figure out a way forward to patch it up, to figure out how we can mitigate that risk. And we did. We ended up blocking those numbers, limiting certain things, and all that stuff. So, like, talking to people is a key aspect of a PM role. Influencing without authority, as the jargon in the industry call it. Um,
Did you do anything to build your skills in influencing or talking to customers and stakeholders in your companies?
yeah. There's, obviously there's a lot of training that you can do. Like there's a really good book called Influencing Without Authority. It's a very good book, highly recommended. It talks about a framework of how you can do it. Um, and there's a bunch of like training sessions you can do around customer interviews. I think absolutely from a skill set perspective, like that's needed. Um, but I think the second part of it is actually just from an experience and mindset perspective, is that you just have to go out there and experience the world. You can't create great products being at your own home. You just can't do it unless, like, coming back to the crypto blockchain thing, like you can if you work in that type of technology. But for majority of the products, you have to go out of your office or your house and go talk to customers and help them solve the problem. Um, so yes, and once you learn that perspective, then you can apply the skills and you can figure out the right questions to ask, and everything will come more naturally. Um, and I think the third thing is about being passionate around the product area as well. Like, like for example, I don't think I can ever work in any betting product or gambling products because that's just not my style. But I've got met a lot of great people that's made a lot of money being a PM in those companies, and they're very good at that and they love it. Um, so it's really around like figuring out what type of industry you want to be on, and that helps you influence because actually really passionate about this space, like education per se. Like I could go endless in this. So yeah.
Yeah, if you're working on a product that you genuinely believe is making an impact, coming back to your kind of motivation for being in product, you're probably going to be more fierce in your advocacy for a certain outcome.
Yeah, exactly. Because you're building for yourself, and what you're doing for others. So yeah, so that influence is really key. And like you got this like product manager slash complete fit. Um,
Cool. What other mindsets are important here?
Let me think about this. Um, and another one that I also keep in mind is actually, um, you are not who you say you are, which is who you think you are. So a lot of the time when I create products, I've got a product idea, and I think they're great, and I would just go and just build it, and I have justifications of like the problem that this is solving for people, and I will put up anecdotal data and insights to justify what I do. But I often have to keep that on the back, keep this perspective as like I am not who I think I am, which is like maybe the stuff that I am doing is not the right things. So I often have to get someone else to check my work and be open around like, okay, well maybe this is not a great idea. Maybe I'm just like getting the right data and the right insight to justify my worldview, but my worldview is not the worldview. So yeah, that's another thing I keep on the back of my mind as well. So I've got like a really good group of people where I have product ideas and I generally write them down and I send it to my product managers and also designers and engineers, and they will critique it. They critique it really bad and think it's great ideas about it. But it's this process that really builds good products.
Cool. So it's kind of like, hey, I know that I'm subject to confirmation bias. I'm going to seek out data that agrees with my opinion. Actually, I probably need to get a little bit of external reference to help me see am I making a good decision based on this information that I have.
Yeah, absolutely. And Amazon does this really well. They've got they're very famous for the Amazon a 6-pager where they forces you to write down your idea, and then people will critique it. But it's through the process that they actually come up with like a really quality idea. Yeah.
The process of writing down the idea, of having to codify it into words as opposed to just see it in your head is an important part of that validation.
Yeah, and also getting people to critique it as well. Because ideas are never right from the get-go. You actually build ideas from other people's ideas. But I've never come up with an original idea myself. I've always just either heard from somewhere and they gave me this epiphany. And it's through the repetition of critique and adding onto it and maybe copy from others and others copy from you. And it's through that process that's where a really good idea becomes a gem or a diamond.
Something that I've seen so much with early stage startup founders when I've worked with them is I've got this great idea. I need to keep it a secret until it's ready to go to market.
Yeah.
Because what if someone steals my idea?
Yeah.
It doesn't work, does it, David?
Yeah, not all the time, I would say. And I think when we talk about idea, there's also two parts. It's a problem space idea and there is a solution space idea. I think a lot of the time people are afraid because they are thinking about the solution part, but they're not, which is, yeah, absolutely easy copyable. I completely agree with that. But what they want to separate is actually the problem space idea. Like, what is this problem I'm solving for people? And that's very hard to copy because that requires a lot of not just the product, but the process, but the founder, but the team. Like that stuff is very hard to copy. So yeah, I think you're absolutely right. Like you can't, and the only way you can test it is to get it out there and talk to people. Like, yeah.
So that the mindset of I need to keep my idea secret is kind of incompatible with a product mindset of of being able to test your idea with users.
Yeah, exactly. I think so. Although there are a lot of companies that I'm working with out there. So I think this is a good point. Like I've had a chance to work with different companies in my career where some companies keep certain product ideas secret and some companies keeps it open. I find that in the long run, the companies that keeps it open are the one that attract the right talent or attract the right mindsets and the one that actually have the longevity in the market versus companies that keeps it a secret. So for example, like if you look at if you look at how like Tesla is a good example that like the open source all the design for the EVs, but anyone can go and build an EV now, but no one does it because the problem space that they're solving is so difficult that even if you know the solution, it's hard to solve.
Building all of the systems and processes around actually putting an EV into production.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
Fantastic. I want to switch gears a little bit and talk about career opportunities in product. It's clearly a really exciting role. It's a meaty role. And we know that many tech companies need great product leaders. What kind of career opportunities do you see in product?
Yeah, product's a great place to come. You should come when you get a chance. So I do promote it, and I think it's a great industry that have a lot of good opportunities. So, like if you start off, you can start off as like a junior PM or like a product owner, and then you can move into like a product manager role, and then you can move into more of a senior PM, and then you can move into like a senior PM, a principal PM, or lead PM type of role. And that's probably like the individual contributor route where you're doing a very good job at creating product and you're working developers and designers. And a principal PM, like the place next door at Meta or Amazon, you get paid very good money. Like you're looking at like $200,000, $300,000 a year, right? In Australia, it's also like principal PMs gets paid like probably over 200K easily. So, and most people are happy with that career path and they end at that area. But if you do want to, you can actually go to the next level, which is getting into more of like the leadership route. That's where you move into like a head of product or group product manager. You move into directors, VP, and so on. And then, and when you get into like the heads of and group level, you start participating in the share of the company. That's where you can get like, bonuses and stock options and all these things. And that's really uncapped, right? The higher you go, depending on what company you go into, if you become a VP of product at Amazon, but you've been there for 10 years, you're probably making so much money. We're looking at like millions. So I guess from a return on investment perspective, it comes back to like what makes you happy, because there's going to be a lot of sacrifices that you have to make from both an IC side and also from a leadership side. And I think that's very circumstantial as well. But career path, it's there. It just comes down to like, what do you want?
What I'm hearing is product management, it's got great career opportunities, fantastic salaries. Even if you don't want to move into a more leadership role of having lots of direct reports, you can still have a 200K plus salary. And you get this fantastic ownership over a product. And I suppose the reason that it's so well paid is generally you're working on a product that hopefully hundreds of thousands or millions of people might use, or giant corporations will use. And so you're directly contributing to kind of value to the company, which is why it's so well remunerated.
Absolutely. And it's a very highly leveraged role. So what that means is that, like, if you think from a business perspective, you're investing into like a $200,000 product manager, like, man, this is crazy, $200,000. And then you're going to invest into like a designer and engineering. So looking at a team of like $1 million, right? So, but then this team is a highly leveraged role where the idea of the product can generate 10 times, 20 times that amount of outcome for the business. So it makes sense to get paid so well. In fact, you might argue that you're underpaid, because if you're building a product that generates like $5 million, $10 million a year, and you're getting paid $200,000, you're like, what's going on, right? So Yeah, so as a result, it's a highly paid role because it's a highly leveraged role. But the downside, as I mentioned, if you build a product that doesn't return that investment, then it's very tough for you to justify your role. So as a result, it's a very high pressure role as well. So it's not as simple as just like doing 9 to 5, getting something out there and it's done. So
With in-demand roles, there's some portability, the ability to maybe change companies, or even like you've recently done, change countries. Can you tell us a bit about your move to Seattle and what that's been like?
yeah, it's love it. It's actually a very interesting journey for me. I have wanted to move and see the world a little bit, but COVID happened, so I didn't get a chance to move. But I think product, I had this hypothesis that product is just transferable skills globally, but I never had a chance to really test that out. And I think the best way to test it out is for me to go out and just test it out. And it turns out to be true. Turns out that, as a product person, just like an engineer, just like a designer, you can actually work anywhere in the world and you create value for the business because of this product mindset and this perspective that you bring, as opposed to like, a very localized role like a copywriter. Maybe copywriter actually does still work, but like a very localized role. So yeah, that's why I'm actually here, just really experience what does, global product management look like, and then and to validate that part, like, is this is transferable skills? Turns out it is. And the second hypothesis I have, which is like, is there a different quality of product managers? Like, just because you work for a big tech company, like in Australia, we have a lot of great people from like Google and Meta, and they come and work in Australia and become like general managers and heads of product, and they're great people. But does that context make a better product manager, or is it the other way around, where you actually are very good yourself and then you become like, a very like a head of product at a big company? Turns out the hypothesis is the other way around. Is like you actually, the skills and experience that you bring in your career within Australia, it's very transferable overseas as well. So that's another hypothesis that I've proven. But yeah, the movie has been really well so far. I'm learning lots. Basically feeling like a beginner again. I'm doing interview practices with people. I'm applying for jobs, hustling, getting the roles, getting referrals, helping out. All that stuff. It's been a really enjoyable process.
That's awesome, David. And so it really sounds like for anyone listening who's thinking, could my career take me overseas? Could I move to the US with my career, for example? There's really a possibility there.
Yeah, absolutely. I absolutely agree. There, you can do it with the product management skill set.
If I'm a comp sci or IT student or BTech student and I want to become a product manager, that's my goal. Do you think I should be trying to work as a developer first? Should I find an entry-level product role? What paths work best here?
Oh, good question. So I would think if you're early on as a student, I would, and I guess you're trying to validate whether a product role is the right role for you, rather than this is the career path that you want to take. Because I could give advice around like, yes, go and just go for internship role, go for APM roles and do this stuff. I think that's the right thing to do if that's the right thing you want. But the time to signal is too slow. So I would suggest to maybe start thinking around like, how can you make friends with the product management circle first? I'm sure you have people that's like older, like, that graduated year 2 before you, and you can connect with them. Like, be friends with those people first, because it would, first off, like, you get job referrals because you know them. And the second thing is you get to understand like, what does the day-to-day look like? So I think, as a student, that's the best way for you to get your foot in the door as a PM, by validating whether it's the right role for you, and also getting referrals if you are the right person. I think that's the first step. Second thing is like the skill set perspective. As a PM, it doesn't really matter where you start. Like you could start as an engineer and move into product. You can start as a designer, move into product. You can start as a business analyst or data person or marketing, move into product. But product is not a role that you get straight out of uni a lot of the time. Although there are rotational programs out there, like in Meta, in Google, and the big tech companies, because they have the machine that can do it. And I can clearly see this as a machine, because as I'm going through the process, they just put you through this machine of interviews. Like people don't even know who I am half the time, and I'm interviewing for the roles. So they've got a very good machine going on. So, but that's not majority of the time where people get into PM roles. So if you're still trying to figure out if this is the right role for you, start in the area that you're passionate in. Like if you like computer, if you like engineering, do that first. If you like design, do that first. Because eventually, if you like product, then you will get there. And also having the network as well. Like, yeah.
Yeah, I love that. Applying that time to signal to internships or job opportunities as well. Actually just make friends with the people who have the job that you want as well.
Yeah, it's the best way. It is the best way to get referrals. And actually coming back to this point, like, what company should you go for, right? Like even if you do want to get into like an engineering design or product, like what type of companies do you apply for? I think for the context of like early career, like people that's first or second job, it's very important for you to get perspectives. You don't want to join a company that is too narrow. Like for example, like a super scrappy startup founder who's got like a team of 5. I think that's great for you to get the experience, but it's not the biggest return on investment based on your own career perspective, because you can't see the broad spectrum and what are the different roles, different departments, different markets, different people that you work with. So early on, I do recommend getting a broad, joining a company that can give you a broad skill. So these are probably like the bigger companies, like the big corporates, or growth company that's going through like a crazy growth phase where they're scaling to multiple countries. Or maybe you might find like a crazy founder like Elon Musk who's there, like take you to like, we're building electric cars, but that's rare, right? But if you do find someone like that, like hang on for your D life. So
amazing.
Yeah.
Are there any, I want to get to some tactical tips. Are there any tools that you love using as a PM, either tech tools or non-technical tools?
Yeah, I love ChatGPT. Like it's probably the product that I like. One time a credit card declined and I couldn't get the pro version of it, and I was like using a slower version. I had to like use VPNs and all that stuff to get my credit card. Like I think AI tools in product space is going to be a huge companion to anyone in the product space, whether if that is having someone for you to jam ideas with. Like I've got this crazy idea. Instead of like writing up a 6-pager, you can just speak to the AI and it would just give you some critique. Help you format your email. So like ChatGPT, amazing, highly recommend it. But another thing that I use is just a very simple, like a to-do list. Like I use like just Apple Notes as a way for me to do my to-do list, and just talk about the top 5 things. Because as a PM, you're always going to have things you got to do, and jotting it down, putting it somewhere, and prioritizing it. It's a key thing.
Being able to select what can I actually achieve today? What are the top 5 things?
Yeah, exactly. And I think the last one is probably get on a meditation app. It's super useful because this is a cognitively heavy role. So you need to train your brain to relax and think about things in context. So getting into meditation really helps you stretch that brain muscle.
Fantastic. Similar question around resources. You talked about Influencing Without Authority. Are there any other books, websites, or courses that you'd recommend?
Yeah. I think, a Bible in the industry is Read Inspired by Marty Kagan. Now, Marty Kagan is a great first-time PM writer. I think anyone should just read his book. Talks a lot about like the end-to-end process of product team, product role, what it does. I think anyone should start with that. But do be careful that, Marty has got a very strong opinion on how he sees the world. So I do suggest to read a diverse set of authors. So, read Marty's Inspired, very good first book to start from. But at the same time, maybe read another book from Melissa Perry called Escape the Build Trap. That's another really good product book that plays on a different perspective of how the product is built. And then I think those two books are very good to start with from a product skill sets perspective. And then I would probably go even more macro and read a book called Lean as 4 Steps to Epiphany by a guy called Steve Blank. It's a really good book. It's very thick. But reading the product stuff and then reading the business stuff give you a really good perspective of like, where does product play in terms of the overall business structure? So I think those are 3 really good books to start from.
And Steve Blank is kind of a classic in that lean startup. He's kind of the father of lean startup. Came up with this wonderful framework. And if you're looking to learn more about how do I build products that solve a heartfelt problem, I think Steve Blank is a wonderful place to start.
Yeah, it's always my go-to. It's a great book to start from. And you don't have to go through all in one setting. Just pick it up, keep it on the back shelf, come back to it once in a while. It's a really good book.
David, any final observations or advice for our audience?
I think one last piece of advice for people that are still trying to figure out what they want in the career. I think our career choices are defined by our own ecosystem and our perspectives. That's probably the key reason why I moved out of Australia, to see the different perspectives. So I would suggest to do that for someone who's early on. Absolutely have a goal of what you want to achieve, but be aware that that goal could move based on your worldview and who you hang out with, the advice that you get from different people. So the framework that I would suggest to follow is, whenever you listen to someone for advice, categorize what they give you. Is it a mindset that they're giving you? Is it a process that they're sharing with you? Or is it a tool? And if you have a black belt of your mindsets, processes, and tools over time, then you can create your own style of Kung Fu. And I think that's the ultimate takeaway for anyone that's going through this career journey.
I love that, David. Break up the advice into mindset, process, tool.
And tools, yeah.
Pick and choose what works best for you. David, for listeners who have really loved this conversation and who want to perhaps even learn more from you, how can they keep in touch with what you're doing?
Yeah, so I have an online course called Product Academy. So you can check it out. It's productacademy.io. That's where I teach everything from a product perspective. I'm also very active on LinkedIn, so you can find me on LinkedIn, David Wang or Product Dave. Both would come up with the right results. So yeah, I think those are the 2 areas. If you want to learn more, my course. If you want to connect, find me on LinkedIn.
I've taken Product Academy and I can highly recommend it. David, it's been such a pleasure talking to you. Thank you so much for being so generous with our audience.
My pleasure as always, and always happy to help.
You've been listening to Programmable, a podcast by JDoodle. You can find us on Spotify, Apple, YouTube, or wherever you get your podcasts. And make sure that you check out JDoodle and try coding in 88 languages in seconds. Thanks again.